And hello, everyone, and welcome back into our candidate series today. We have had candidates for Agriculture Commissioner, we've had candidates for Congress, we've had hopefully the next governor of the state of Alabama on, and now we have a man running for the United States Senate who is running for the seat held by the man who will once held by the man who will hopefully be the next governor of Alabama, Doug Jones, Kyle Sweetser. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Hey Jake, thanks for having me. I'm really excited about this. Thank you so much.
Um, I will say this, it is interesting to me that I have finally come to the point that people my age are running for the United States Senate. I believe me and Kyle are around the same age. I was born in December of 88, and I believe you were born in January of 89.
Yep, pretty close.
So very close there. So Kyle, tell me a little about your background to let people who don't know you know a little about yourself.
Well, I'm a Mobile, Alabama native. I was born and raised here in Alabama. I started my own business in 2016. I was pretty much born into construction though, but I started my own business in 2016. Is when I got my business license, going in and out of people's garages, fixing their garage door, getting them out of their house at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning so they go to work. And I'll tell you, from that point, I was a former Republican voter. It's pretty much what I was born into, as most folks here in the state of Alabama. But going in and out of people's houses and hearing how seeing folks rapidly change from the rhetoric of the MAGA movement was disturbing to me. And I got to witness that on an honest level. When you do work for folks in their house, they're a lot more honest with you than out in public. And hearing so many stories about how folks were so divided they can't even eat Thanksgiving dinner with their families anymore. That was pretty disturbing to me. In 2018, I got to see steel tariffs and how they work. They made products go up, finished steel products go up, and if you're not familiar with tariffs, tariffs are regressive taxes. And a lot of folks don't actually know that. What that means is that lower income you are, the higher percentage of what you take home, you're paying for these tariffs. It's a tax that gets passed down to the consumer in the end, and small businesses. And in a place like Alabama, where we're 49th in income, things like tariffs affect us the most. So I got to see that and experience that firsthand. In January 6th, though, 2021, that's whenever I started. After that, I started speaking out. I started doing everything that I could. Started trying to de-radicalize MAGA folks and sort of show them that Trump is not their guy. And that activism, that national activism, put a huge target on my back. I made the right people mad. And because of that, I was invited by Kamala Harris to speak at the Democratic National Convention, where I delivered a speech about tariffs and against the Trump administration and against the direction Trump 2.0 was going to take us. And now we're here. So I'm reigning. Do you want to go into the platform or
Um,
go
I,
straight into it?
we'll get to that later. I've got some questions about that. Generally, this is just a question, and that's a good introduction to you. I will say this. I work in retail and I sell farm products. I don't want to say where I work, just not to put my employer out there, but I sell farm products. And I started noticing in 2017 the tariffs hitting because we had massive price jumps. And I will say this, the price jumps that we are experiencing now because of the tariffs are much more significant than we experienced any time during COVID. And it is insane how much metal products have gone up. I mean, nuts and bolts when I started were like $3.99 for grade two. We're up to nearly $6 for a pound of grade two nuts and bolts right now. And if you want to buy grade eight, you're going to have to sell your firstborn to get a
Yeah.
pound of that. So you talked about January 6th. Being, your break from the Republican Party, um, seeing the effects of Trump 2.0? Was that what inspired you to run? Or after that speech at the DNC, did they kind of come to you and say, look at this race?
Well, it's natural. I will say I was asked by tons and tons of folks. I actually spoke back at it was right after the DNC speech, but I was invited beforehand to Principles First in Maryland, where I spoke alongside the former governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan, who was a Republican, but I think he was the first one to send the National Guard in after January 6th. So a do the right thing Republican. And, I was sitting next to Sarah Longwell at the Bulwark, and she actually, that was the first person to ask me if I was, if I'd planned on running. She said, are you planning on running as some kind of centrist or something? I said, no, I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. That's why I started speaking out. But just over the years, I had so many folks encourage me to run. And to me, a seat like the Senate, it's something that no one deserves. You have to earn it, and I really don't think people really understand, what someone's going to do until they're there with that seat underneath them. So, it was just one of those things that I wanted to do something. I wanted to do anything. So I started speaking up. I took that as far as I could possibly take it. And now I'm running for United States Senate to represent the people of Alabama, to flip our state, to help rebuild a competitive two-party system here in the state, because it's one of the things that ails us the most, not having a real democracy in our state.
You know, you're running for an open seat. As my board back here shows, there are 11 United States Senate seats that are guaranteed a new senator next year because their senators are retiring. Now, if you expand that out a little bit to seats where it's very likely their senators are running for governor, you get up to 13. But I have counted the possibility of 20 freshman senators next year. Um, and did your strategy change though when Tuberville announced for governor? Because originally, the assumption was Tuberville, the current senator, was going to be your opponent. But has the strategy changed any, the messaging, now that it's an open seat?
Well, it's one of those things. Look, I view it as when we announced we're running. A few weeks later, Tuberville dropped out, and he put out a fundraising email mentioning my campaign that I spoke at the DNC, and I don't even remember the particulars, but it's floating around somewhere on Twitter. So yeah, I mean, we were going to hit this guy on his terrible record. We were going to hit this guy on the fact that he's not been genuine about his residency, and there was just so much to come after him on. And really, folks here in Alabama, when they see somebody like Tuberville taking a traditional Southern accent and making us all look bad, it makes a lot of Republicans mad too. But ultimately, we were always going to be running against Donald Trump. And I know people in politics don't like to hear that, and they're terrified of that. But that's the reality. That's where we're at. We are running against Trump, whether you like it or not. Trump comes out and talks about Democrats being evil, and some of the folks on the Republican side. So we've got to make sure that we take the gloves off and really take it to these folks. So one of the things that really changed, I think we got quicker to that point, is trying to show people that we've had the same Republican leadership. Doesn't matter who they are, for X amount for a while now, largely overwhelming one party, and they haven't been able to move our state out of last place. So if you do, what do they say? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. Well, we're here now. So the strategy really is to show people that, the truth. Republicans in the state of Alabama have not worked for the people of Alabama, especially on the federal level. Now we see these Republican federal officials, these Republican electeds, they go up to Washington, D.C., and they are now a rubber stamp for the president. They are all for a unitary executive branch.
That is true. And I'm an advocate of hitting Donald Trump 6 days a week and twice on Sunday. I am definitely in your camp of some people talk about, oh, we're going to talk about high-minded issues. No, cut that shit out. You hit Donald Trump and you hit him hard. When you talk about high-minded issues, you end up in the situation we're in now. When you do like Joe Biden and go after Donald Trump and go after him hard, you win. So I'm of the opinion you go after Trump. You also talk about issues, but the most important issue currently facing our country right now is Donald Trump. And I will tell my listeners, Kyle's likely opponent is a congressman by the name of Barry Moore. Barry Moore got the Trump endorsement in his primary. And if you want to look up just hardcore MAGA, Barry Moore is the definition of it. There's another guy that is probably going to place third, who's the current Attorney General of Alabama by the name of Steve Marshall, who cosplays as MAGA. And who Moore's going to be in the runoff with is I know nothing about, but Hudson is likely to be in the runoff. So what has been the most eye-opening thing about running for political office?
Well, the amount of gatekeeping there is, the little amount. We've got some stuff going on in the state where we're building up. But I went to Virginia early on to kind of see Abigail Spanberger and how she was operating there, and they had quite a bit of organization. Sort of understanding the amount of work that needs to go into this, and it's constant work. We've got to bring more people in the Democratic Party in the state, and I do feel there's this push to close off the bubble, and to keep people out. And that's not when you talk to folks that identify as progressive, which let's be honest, pretty much everybody is both a conservative and a progressive. It just depends on your definition. If you believe in the Constitution, you could call yourself a conservative, but then you could push other issues that are progressive. So I think these labels cause a whole lot of problems. Looking at that, trying to get through to people and say, hey, we've got to work together. You've got to bring people in. If you want to have you're not going to get everything because that's not how a democracy works. You're going to get a part of something that you don't have right now. And that is the fight. It is a hard fight to try to unify people, but we're going to get after it. And I'm just so happy that folks like you are out here, connecting to everyone. Thank you so much.
I am very much, I tell people my politics are pragmatic liberalism. If I can get 80 or set, even as low as 70% of what I want, I will take that because I can build on that to get to what my ultimate, end goal is. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of progressives sometimes let that get in the way and be a stumbling block. So thank you for your message of, we're going to get there. It may just take some time and take little wins.
Right. Well, and I don't think you could call yourself a progressive if you're not able to progress because you can't win.
Right. And that is sometimes I think some of the big stumbling blocks to some of the more far left members of the Democratic Party. Now, this question, you talked about yourself being a Republican, and some of your opponents have made great use of the fact that you supported Donald Trump twice. Some have been disingenuous and falsely suggested that you supported Trump 3 times because you voted in the 2020 Republican primary. I mean, you could call me a a Biden voter because I voted for him in the 2020 primary. I voted for him in the 2020 general election and voted for him in the 2024 primary. I voted for Joe Biden once. It's just, but you supported Trump twice. What do you say to those critics who are concerned that you may be a wolf in sheep's clothing?
Well, back to the point of the voting for 3 times. So when we put that speech together, that was carefully thought out. It was originally going to say 2 times. I said, one of the problems that we have today is that so many people, well-off folks, well-educated folks, don't think about the primary. So part of it was an activism point to try to raise awareness when people do question that. Wait a second, 3 times. We've only during the speech, Trump had only ran, 1 time, right, or twice during the speech. So it wouldn't have made sense. So the point was at the time to get people to think, to get people to say, hey, why is he saying that? Oh, there's a primary. Let me get more involved. Let me learn more. So that was the point of doing that in the speech. But look, that's some kind of really whacked out conspiracy. If you say it out loud, it makes no sense at all. So the hardest path that I could possibly take is to run as a Democrat in the state of Alabama. Okay, that makes no sense at all. It defies logic. This is a very, very hard thing to do, especially when you're like me and you have a family and you did most of the work physically yourself. So it's a huge hit to me. But it matters not just to me, it matters to my family, and it matters to so many people in Alabama that have felt left behind for years and years, which is probably 70 to 80% of folks here.
That's my common refrain when I hear people make that suggestion. My suggestion is, wait a minute, listen to yourself. You know how hard it is to be a Democrat in the state of Alabama because these are people who are activists and working on the ground. I'm like, you know especially how hard it is to be a Democrat in Alabama, get your message out and have people take you seriously. Do you really think that if he was looking for an easy way to get in the United States Senate, he would run as a Democrat in the state of Alabama? Like that defies logic. So I appreciate that. And I've got to, we have got to win over people who voted for Donald Trump, people who may have supported him in the past, if Kyle is going to win this United States Senate seat. It's just the math of the situation. And Kyle is important because Kyle saw January 6th, and that was a moment for him. He said, I'm done with this shit. I'm done with this. I'm moving to a new place. So thank you for that. Um, I will say this. I considered myself an independent before January 6th. I was not comfortable saying I was a Democrat. I was just, I was a person that did not like Donald Trump and hoped the Republican Party could reform. But January 6th was a breaking point because to me, on that day, you had a party that supported the overthrow of the United States government, and you had a party that supported the Constitution. And it was very clear that dividing line. So I'm sure you had that awakening on January 6th. It sounds like it.
Yeah, you look at what happened after January 6th. I think you had Mitch McConnell came out against Trump. You had all these, I think you even had Nancy Mace from memory. And then within about 2 or 3 months, something changed. I guess they figured out, I don't know what they figured out. They could just ram everything through a unitary executive through Donald Trump. But just a really sad for our country. It's a stain on our nation's history, and the effort that's been put into covering that up is disgusting.
There were two Republicans that stood up for the Constitution and still do. One of them is a gentleman from Illinois. He now lives in Texas by the name of Adam Kinzinger. The other is a very brave woman from the state of Wyoming, and her name is Liz Cheney. And she is going to chase Donald Trump to the gates of hell, fling him over, and say, you deal with him. So thank you. What issue do you believe is the most important issue facing the country currently?
The executive office being out of control. It affects all of us. It affects our national security. It affects affordability in the state when you have a president, that's holding our entire economy hostage, and we don't have a Congress that wants to reassert authority over those tariffs. and fight for the people, why on earth have there been any tariffs on food and clothing? Look at everything that's going on right now. That's ridiculous. It's hard enough. And you look at that and you look at how the Supreme Court has ruled, basically giving the president a free pass to do whatever he wants by saying that the president is above the law. I want to pass legislation that undoes that Supreme Court ruling because that's dangerous. It's absolutely dangerous. But you look at the president, you look at the fact that he's launching wars without Congress. We have to rein in the executive office. The executive office is the number one issue, and the amount of power that the executive office wields.
That is so true. I'm a big advocate of Article 1 power, and I want to see one of the 2028 candidates who are going to be running run on the fact that, hey, my platform is I want you to take power away from me, and I'm going to give it back to Congress. So, budget making, things that Congress has frittered away to Congress, that Congress freely did, by the way, because they're too afraid to vote on important issues. You've got these issues of, like you said, the war. I want to see Congress take back all of this power that it has given away to the executive and give it back. There's one thing that I see that proposed that I believe is really dangerous is giving the president a line item veto, like some state governors have. Can you imagine what would happen if Donald Trump had a line item veto for the budget? California and other blue states wouldn't get any money. And to go further, if you had a really extreme Democratic president, red states wouldn't get funding. It's just a disaster waiting to happen. Um, to be successful in the Senate, bipartisan agreement is essential. Who is a Republican member of the Senate that you believe you could work with?
Tom Tillis, though he's on his way out because, you know,
Yeah.
and there's so many folks that are on their way out. We'll see who pops up coming up this election cycle. So, but Tom Tillis is a good one. I would say Mitt Romney and those folks, but there is this huge shift happening. I don't agree with some of the other folks in the Senate that are Republicans, but I think that I'm not sure that we're going to see Republicans do even as well as we think they're going to do right now, which is not good. I think that it's going to be a blowout.
I'm of the same mind. In my mind, I can get Democrats to 55, 56 seats in the Senate under the right conditions in this election. So I I think that the um, ability of Republicans to throw monkey wrenches in the work of a Democratic Congress next year will be greatly reduced, especially in the House, but in the Senate as well. Um, why should primary voters vote for you in this Democratic primary coming up? You've got several opponents, I believe four opponents.
Yeah, three or four. I think one is didn't qualify, but yeah, it's basically the story. It's just what I've been saying in my stump speech, what I've been saying for years. I'm a former Trump supporter. People can change. I can help message to these folks. I can help win these folks over. I know what moderate Republicans are concerned about. I know really how to talk to them. So we've got to win over. We've got to have a motivated Democratic base. We've got to have Republicans that are so ticked off with what's going on, they're just not going to vote. And we're going to have that. And then we've got to have 200,000 Republican crossover voters. And I'm the only guy that it has been messaging, that has been trying to lay the groundwork for this. And I'm the only guy with a background, that can do this, that can pull this off. It is an uphill battle, but it can be done.
I agree with you there. And one thing that is going to benefit you and other Democratic candidates is the fact that we have a full ballot. And I think that one is due to the level of anger and level of divisiveness in the country. But there's another thing we have like that it cannot be discounted. For the first time since 2006, Democrats in this state have a full ballot. We have candidates in every congressional district. We have candidates for every single constitutional office on the ballot, and we have um, a candidate for United States Senate. We have candidates that can win. It is the most important part. We don't have just a name on the ballot. You've got Kyle. You've got at the top of the ticket. You've got former Senator Jones, a man who has won in the state before recently. And you've got great congressional candidates in your area. You've got Clyde Jones running for United States Congress. You got Lee McGinnis running against Mike Rogers. Up in the fifth, we've got a huge competitive primary up here with three people running to run against Dale Strong. So it is a really exciting time to be a Democrat in Alabama. And I think after the primary, the most important thing is because some of these primary races have turned a little divisive, um, is for all of us to come together and support whoever the nominee of the Democratic primary is and whoever our voters say should carry the mantle. Um, what has been an inspiring story from the campaign so far?
So I put out a flyer last minute going to Blount County to speak up in Blount County. There were some other candidates there as well. And just an open invitation on Facebook and across social media. But I received a Facebook comment from someone asking if they could come. And obviously I said, sure. It was like 2 hours before the event. So she showed up with her family. She let us all speak, and then she asked to speak, and she came up and she said, "Look, it was a very passionate speech." She said, "I was an undocumented immigrant for 26 years. The immigration system is broken. She, like I said, she had her kids there. She started tearing up and talking about how what was happening was wrong." And how she was so inspired by what we were all doing, and that she was going to go out and try to register every person that was legally able to vote to vote. So hearing someone so passionate about that, because we have in the state been speaking about immigration. Look, I'll be honest, I've gotten a lot of blowback from Democrats for platforming immigration at the very beginning. If you look back, I've been talking about immigration since the start of our campaign, and it irked quite a few people because they don't think that that messaging works in Alabama, but they're wrong. The people that we can win over in Alabama that are rational Republicans can see what's happening right now and know, and they know how we're doing this, how we're going about immigration is just flat out wrong. So it was very inspiring, though, to hear her go up there. She talked about some of the conditions that some of these folks that are put in these detention facilities are facing, where you have 30 people in a room, men and women, not separated by sex, with a toilet and no privacy in the room, and just very disturbing. But it really reminded me, why I'm doing this, because of people like that, the people that have been, they're usually afraid to speak up for obvious reasons. But in her case, she's now a U.S. citizen, and she's using her rights to speak out and stand up against this authoritarian MAGA movement.
That is so true. Some of my listeners live in other states and they may not be aware of this. Alabama has a fairly significant Hispanic population and immigrant population. And I think that is so true that immigration is something voters in Alabama want to hear about because quite frankly, at the end of the day, a lot of them are horrified by what they're seeing the Trump administration do. They're seeing some of their neighbors and friends no longer around because they've been rounded up. And these are good tax-paying people, people that have maybe broken an immigration law, but otherwise are law-abiding citizens. And they're no longer able to contribute to the vibrancy of their communities. You've also seen legal immigrants who are here legally, but are scared and, no longer playing as an active role in the community as they did because they're scared they're going to put a target on their back. So I thank you and appreciate you for talking about immigration because I do believe that a lot of people are horrified by what they're seeing. And this is actually a better issue for Democrats than people may realize. Um, so,
Absolutely. You look at Republicans in the past, they used to not talk the way they talk under Donald Trump. Go back and listen to Ronald Reagan. He's got some very famous speeches about that. And same with George Bush, even, and Mitt Romney. And then there was just this huge change. We need immigration legislation, we need reform.
there's another candidate running in a very Republican state, a Democratic candidate, who has a great quote on this. Out in Texas, James Tallarico is the Democratic nominee. And he was speaking about immigration, and I've got a train coming by, so I'm going to let it pass before I go into the quote. Oh, the joys of living beside a train track. So Tallarico was speaking, and he was speaking about immigration, and he said, our country is like a house. It has a great big front porch, but it also has a door. So he's talking about welcoming people, but also, sensible, border enforcement. And I think that is very true. You can be very pro immigration and be very uh, cognizant of the fact we have people here already, but you can also support smart border enforcement. And I don't think smart border enforcement is building a 2,000-mile wall. I think it's multifaceted. So, um, what do you believe is an issue that is not getting a lot of attention at the moment, that is going to be a huge issue in the next 5 to 10 years, and how should we start to address it?
Well, I think everybody's sort of getting there. It's the energy in the grid. Everybody's talking about prices, everybody's talking about AI, but you look at the amount of power that we're going to need more, we're going to need to generate more power. So making sure that we start to build policy really around the grid because it's the base of our economy and how we're going to move forward with that in a responsible way. So we have to expand the grid. There's not any way around it, or our society will not progress. So our country won't progress. So when we do that, we need to make sure that we're doing it in a responsible way that's forward thinking, and we make sure that we're focusing on nuclear, wind, solar, and to really make sure that some of these places like AI, or some of these folks that are drawing a ton of energy, that they also pay into this expansion and they're a part of that. So it's not all on our backs.
That is true. I was unaware until I would say about the summer of last year how much of an environmental effect these AI data centers are having. But since that time, I have become more and more on the very skeptical side of AI, because I see the environmental damage and the power usage that you were talking about. And I think that this is one of the things that people don't really consider when talking about AI is the amount of environmental damage these
Yeah,
places do.
well, I'll give you so that's basically we're going to have negative impacts no matter what we do. So a way to kind of keep those negative impacts to a minimum is to make sure that whatever we are powering these data centers with, at the very least, is clean energy, because otherwise you have the negative impacts of the data center on top of being powered by coal. So I want to take a very targeted approach and make sure that we're as focused as possible as something that we can actually control, that we can do to kind of mitigate these negative impacts. And that is moving towards clean energy. Every kilowatt that we produce that powers these data centers needs to be clean energy.
I'll speak up in just a second. I've got another train.
No, that's okay.
It's a great time. Yeah, this is the time they all go by. Um, so that is true. Would you consider nuclear energy to be a clean energy and maybe helping um, make it easier for places to build some of these small reactors that they're talking about?
Absolutely. I think that's the best approach. Most experts are putting out the small reactor model. I think that's a part of the future, but I think that we should make sure that we diversify our energy. So we don't have to just pick one thing. We should do what makes sense, and we should have a diversified approach to the grid.
And one thing I hope that the Democratic Congress would do next year is roll back all these funding cuts that the Trump administration has done for wind energy and for solar. For some reason, I never knew Donald Trump was a bird fan, that he loved the birds. But apparently Donald Trump hates windmills because apparently he thinks they kill the birds. And also he believes they cause cancer, but that's a discussion for another day. Um, Kyle, where can voters find out more information about your campaign? And most importantly, I know candidates hate this last part, but I don't mind doing it. Where can they give you some funds to help fund this campaign?
Well, you can go to my website at kyleforalabama.com. That's KYLEFOR Alabama.com. There's a donate link there. I have multiple payment platforms. If you want to go through ActBlue, you can look me up on the ActBlue directory. Though the payment platform that I use costs me less money, and so we can put more money into the campaign. Um, Outside of that, you can go across social media at Kyle for Alabama. I've got a X, formerly Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, pretty everything except for Truth Social. And I will never get a Truth Social.
Well, I must say, after the Jesus post that Trump did the other day, I had to break down and I had to get one because I could not trust, seeing what some people posted out there saying he was on Truth Social. I only lurk on there, but I must say, you are a better person for not being on there because it is a dark window into the president's mind. So thank you, Kyle, for coming on. I will put all of those accounts in our show notes, and people can click on them. So thank you, Kyle, for coming on. We'll be back soon. I'm going to have some candidates who I've had on before the primary, on after the primary, after they get the nomination. So I will see y'all all then.